user malfunction. Oh boy. So Descartes basically wanted to examine his beliefs because he knew that he had acquired a lot of questionable beliefs, and really he thought that philosophy needed to be put on a firm footing, that a lot of unjustifiable assumptions had crept into it during the Middle Ages. But at any rate, he believes he has acquired some false beliefs, and beliefs deduced from them are going to be false. So, see, you might, knowing that Descartes in the end basically tries to get back the very beliefs he questioned at the beginning, you might say, well, what has he done? What has changed? He starts out questioning our ordinary common sense beliefs and even mathematics, but then he gets it all back. After he proves God's existence and that God is no deceiver, he gets back our common sense beliefs. So what has changed? Well, what Descartes thinks has changed is, after he has gone through his whole process, he thinks he has set philosophy on a firmer base, on a base of certainty, whereas it wasn't before. A lot of things were still being debated in philosophy in a way that they weren't. And again, the model he uses is Euclidean geometry. If you took plane geometry in high school, you want to keep that model in mind. You remember that the whole system was based on a few simple axioms like, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, or things equal to the same things are equal to one another. And so Descartes thinks that by building things on certain principles like that, and of course the most certain principle he finds is the cogito, I think therefore I am, he thinks that he can do for the rest of knowledge, ordinary knowledge we claim to have by common sense, and also scientific knowledge and mathematical knowledge, he thinks he can put, and especially knowledge coming at us from philosophy, he thinks he can put that on a firm footing. So yes, Descartes in the end finishes where he started, having faith in the ordinary beliefs of common sense, in his belief in God, in his belief in science. But what he thinks has changed is he's given these beliefs that were open to skepticism before a new solid foundation. So that's the point of what he's trying to do, right? So what he thinks needs to be done to put philosophy and the sciences on firm ground is two things. One way to look at it is he's got a negative program. Folks who walked in can pick up a copy. There are two different handouts. He's got a negative program which consists in using skeptical arguments to clear away the underbrush, get rid of beliefs that aren't certain, that are dubious. But then his positive program is to rebuild knowledge in general and philosophy on a firm, certain footing. Now, you've probably discerned that the empiricists don't think the rationalists have done this at all. Empiricism ends in Hume's skepticism, where, Hume took beliefs that the empiricists thought were so sure and certain and provided skeptical arguments against them. But the rationalists, like Descartes, believed that we could rebuild philosophy on the model of geometry and get it to a point where things would be certain and they wouldn't be open to question in the way that they were in Descartes' day. Now, some of you might be thinking in the back of your head, but wait a second, aren't these things still being debated even up to our present day? Yeah. So that lets you know how successful Descartes was. In fact, he wasn't successful. But he tried. So Descartes then, using skeptical arguments, and Descartes did not invent most of the skeptical arguments that he uses in the Meditations. Most of them were already around. But he uses them to try to whittle through any beliefs that he thinks he can raise a doubt about. And he's going to treat any of his current beliefs that he can raise a doubt about as if they were false. And he's going to set them on the side for now and say, well, okay, these beliefs are not certain, so we need to look elsewhere for certain beliefs. And the way he goes through his beliefs is to go through categories of beliefs. Obviously, this would be a completely undoable program if you had to go through each and every individual belief by itself. And so Descartes is not doing that. So the first category of beliefs he looks at are the beliefs that we have based on what our senses tell us. Now we saw that even Plato thought that this kind of knowledge by the senses, was on a secondary level compared with what reason taught us. And Descartes comes up with the same kind of view. So what Descartes conjectures, of course, is that these beliefs that seem so certain and so clear, beliefs like there's a real table in front of me, he says, well, haven't things been clear and seem certain in a dream? And yet, I've awakened and I was in bed, and I realized that the beliefs that I had, that I was sitting in my living room in front of the fire, Descartes says, I realized when I woke up that I was just dreaming and that these beliefs were false. And of course, what is Descartes' conjecture? Well, he says, if I might be dreaming some of the time, how do I know that I'm not dreaming all of the time? How do I know specifically that I'm not dreaming now? And so Descartes uses this conjecture to call into question what his senses tell him. But he also puts us in the egocentric predicament here. In other words, Descartes is raising the view that maybe it's possible that all of our experience that seems so certain could be about things that are false. Maybe all of this is in a dream, or you're going to see he brings in the evil demon conjecture. Maybe some malevolent being is causing us to have these experiences. But for Descartes, what I say about our being in the egocentric predicament is our mind is like in the center, and what it first is acquainted with, what it first experiences, is its own inner mental life, its own sensations and perceptions. And that raises the question of whether any of those perceptions can be thought to be accurate, whether the beliefs I have based on them are beliefs about something that's real. And Descartes thinks that by conjecturing that maybe all of these experiences are part of a dream, he thinks he can raise a philosophic doubt about them. Now again, remember, Descartes is raising these doubts as part of a philosophic method. In real life, Descartes doesn't doubt that he's really sitting in his easy chair, that he's really by the fire, that he really has a pen in his hand, that he has a body, any more than you and I doubt where we are. But he says, as a philosopher, the fact that I can conjecture that for all I know this could all be a dream allows me to raise a philosophical doubt. We saw that his method is sometimes called methodic doubt, methodological skepticism, hyperbolic doubt, and it's not a normal doubt that he's raising here. It's doubt as part of a theoretical procedure he's going through. So Descartes says there aren't any sure marks that distinguish waking from sleeping. Things like recognizing my eyes are open or touching my hand could be activities I'm performing in a dream. And that was the reason I saw the Matrix. I showed you the Matrix. The Matrix raises the same sort of issues. Could we be doing all of this and think it's real, and yet we're in a computer-generated world, that the evil machines are creating for us, called the Matrix, and none of our beliefs about ordinary life are real. Well, the movie The Matrix raises the same issue, and it even draws a parallel between that and the dream conjecture of Descartes. And it's important to see that in raising this dream conjecture, Descartes is not only calling into doubt ordinary, everyday, common sense beliefs like there's a table in front of me and there's a real glasses case sitting on it, but he also raises a doubt about any knowledge we have based on the observational sciences, because those depend on sense observations or sense observations aided by additional apparatus like telescopes and microscopes. And yes, some primitive versions of these were around even in Descartes' day. So the sciences, the observational sciences, are brought into doubt by the dream conjecture. But when I say a science is not made doubtful, for Descartes, mathematics is part of the sciences. and he calls them the abstract sciences. And abstract sciences like arithmetic and geometry are not called into question because Descartes is convinced that their basic truths will remain true even in a dream, that a square is still going to have 4 sides. 2 plus 3, a basic arithmetical truth, is still going to equal 5, even in a dream. Now, I told you that I have my suspicions about this, because if things come into and go out of existence at will in dreams, as they often do, how can you say that 2 plus 3 equals 5? If the objects you're considering don't remain in existence, at any rate, but that's my own point of view. So Descartes really raises a very unusual doubt in order to question the truths of geometry and mathematics. The only way he finds he can do it is to bring in some hypothetical imaginary entity, an evil genius, or some books say an evil demon. And what I told you when we went over this the first time is you can make this a little more believable if you realize that you can screw up doing a math exercise or doing a math problem, right? You make a mistake along the way, you get the wrong answer. And so imagine that there's some malevolent being whispering in your ear, making you screw up systematically in your beliefs about ordinary mathematical truths like 2 plus 3 equals 5 or a square has 4 sides. Now again, it's very hard to raise real doubts about stuff like this, but Descartes is convinced, though, that by bringing in this, and it's almost a literary device, of this hypothetical evil genius, he can even raise a doubt about something like mathematical truths. So what the evil demon conjecture shows about mathematical knowledge is that we can raise a doubt even about that. So the belief that survives both of these conjectures, of course, is what he expresses elsewhere, not in the Meditations, but elsewhere as cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. In the Meditations, he says this is necessarily true every time I think it or pronounce it. Not the cogito, but the proposition I am, I exist. Why does he think that? Well, because even if the evil genius is causing him to doubt everything else, the one thing he can't be caused to doubt is that he's here and he exists to doubt, to have a doubt. You can't have a doubt if you don't exist, right? Or another way of putting it, if the evil genius is deceiving him about all of these ordinary beliefs, his common sense beliefs about the world, scientific knowledge, even mathematical knowledge, if this evil entity is deceiving him about all of this, the one thing Descartes says that is beyond doubt is that at least he's here to be deceived. So he says, no matter how much I try, I can't get rid of my own existence. That's the one thing I can't raise even a theoretical doubt about. Even if the evil genius is deceiving me about everything else, he can't deceive me about the fact that I, Descartes, exist. And of course, Descartes thinks he exists as a thinking being. He says a thinking thing. Come in. Is it locked? What's the password? You don't get in. If you don't know the password, you don't get in if you're late, right? You know, we'll have to give you a magic knock, like the old speakeasies in the 20s. And no, my parents were around in the 20s. I wasn't. There's some of the people in the neighborhood were saying that in the 1920s, the home that I now own was, it wasn't a speakeasy, but they thought it was a bookie joint. We did find an old 1920s era telephone when my parents moved into it in the 50s. Yeah. So folks, for those of you who came in late, let me repeat, I have very little left of my voice, so I really can't be shouting over people. I'm gonna so the belief that survives both conjectures is that he exists, which he later expresses as the famous "I think, therefore I am," cogito ergo sum. And just to go through the last points really quickly, the essential property of an immaterial soul is thought. I think, therefore I am. What is doubting? It's a mental operation. Doubt is part of thinking. What is being deceived? Well, again, that's a mental operation. So Descartes gives us a picture of humans as having various mental operations in them. And he does this in a more detailed way than anybody ever did before him. So Descartes proves that he exists as a thinking mind or thing. And he thinks that knowledge of the soul is even on a more firm footing than knowledge of the body. We can doubt that we have a body, but Descartes says we can't doubt that we're an immaterial thinking being. Now, I'm not going to ask you questions on the mind-body problem because while was mentioned in the video, but basically, for Descartes, immaterial minds are not located in Newtonian material space. Descartes does conjecture that interaction between mind and body occurs in the pineal or pineal gland at the base of the brain, but there's absolutely no observational evidence to support this conjecture. Plus, you don't solve in other words, the problem is how can the immaterial mind move the material body? And Descartes says, well, that happens through the pineal gland. But what is the pineal gland? Isn't it a material body? So there's as much of a problem explaining how the soul can influence the pineal gland or pineal gland as there is explaining how it moves the rest of the body. So Descartes leaves us with this problem of explaining on his principles how immaterial mind can move material matter. and vice versa. And that's what's considered the mind-body problem. Well, before I'm going to lock, I'm going to pause this for a second. And